Welcome to part 4 of the E320 CDI transmission overhaul. This is the reinstallation video. It is going to be shorter than all of the rest because I did not get to have as good a shots or as good a lighting in the shots as I would have liked to. This is being uploaded about 2 weeks after the rest of the rebuild videos because I was actually sold a bad reman torque converter. It was a USA reman torque converter. It was just my luck that I got sold a bad converter, so I had to pull the transmission again, install the second new torque converter, and then reinstall the transmission. Pulling the transmission in and out those last 2 times have really given me an insight on how to pull that transmission efficiently. So this last video is going to be like a tips and tricks of how to pull a transmission on an E320 CDI, the most efficient way to get to the bell housing bolts, as well as all the little accessories on the outside of the transmission. Now, rather than entering to remove the top bell housing bolts from the engine compartment and trying to work in there, I actually found it was a whole heck of a lot easier to try and remove those top bell housing bolts from underneath by fishing a long extension over top of the bell housing and back from the drive shaft and over top of the bell housing and then to those bolts. And in order to see up there, I used a wireless endoscope that went to my phone, and then I was able to use my phone to see exactly where the socket was going. Doing it this way saved, and I'm not exaggerating, literally hours from the removal and installation process. The first removal of the transmission, taking those bolts out from behind the engine compartment, took me just a little bit over 8 hours, and the last time removing the transmission took me under 3 hours to remove it. So being able to get to those bolts from the bottom made things so much easier. I did not have to drop the subframe. I did not even have to get into the engine compartment in order to remove the transmission. It was all done from underneath. As far as tools go, in order to remove the bell housing bolts, you're going to need an E12. That's made for an external Torx. The equivalent size of that as well is if you have a 12.11 millimeter socket, that will work for taking out those bolts as well. I also needed a good 3 feet of extensions in order to reach the top bell housing bolts from the rear of the transmission. You're going to need an E8 Torx or a 8 millimeter 12-point socket in order to remove a couple of the bolts that hold the oil cooler lines in place. You're going to need an E10 socket in order to remove the Torx bolt that holds the ground strap onto the transmission case. You're going to need a T50 and an 18 millimeter box end wrench in order to remove all of the bolts and nuts that hold the drive shaft onto the transmission or the flex disc onto the transmission. You're going to need a 13, 16, and 18 millimeter socket with extensions in order to reinstall the rear transmission mount assembly and crossmember. A little more on that crossmember as well. I actually discovered that my crossmember was pretty severely bent. It was causing the transmission to sit lower, about 1.5 inches lower than normal. I didn't even discover that that was bent until I took the crossmember off with the mount and everything removed from it and looked at it, and it was actually severely bent. So I ordered a new one in from the dealership. It was about $36. And here's a comparison of what that looked like. I noticed when rebuilding the transmission, when I popped the transmission out and took this off, I noticed this was a little bent here, and it's even more bent back here. You can see that bolt right there looks like it was pulled up. This crossmember is severely bent. So what I did was I ordered a new one from the dealership. It was around just shy of $40 for a new crossmember. And here's the difference. That's how flat these are supposed to be. Holy crap, guys. This transmission crossmember was causing the transmission to sit down a full 1.5 inches. 1.5 inches. Now, to anyone that really doesn't know what that means, that causes the rear output shaft of the transmission and the drive shaft to basically become disaligned. It causes a high load or heavy acceleration shudder. And it's from the drive shaft slapping up and down like this because this is not aligned. So putting the new one in should remedy that issue. I just wanted to share this with you guys because this is a problem that I've been chasing down for a couple of years and was not able to track down because I did not know that this mount was not supposed to have a slight curvature to it, but it is not. It's supposed to be totally flat like this. You're also going to need a 19mm box end wrench in order to remove both of the transmission oil cooler lines, the banjo bolts that hold those lines to the transmission. Now, the reason that I didn't go fully in depth in getting a lot of video footage on how to remove and install the transmission, guys, is because it's really more a job of having the right equipment than it is having the right knowledge. It's very self-explanatory how to remove these transmissions when you get up in there with a light and look in there. But really, I found that it's actually harder just having the right equipment to be able to remove it, having all the right tools, and it's absolutely critical that you have enough room to work under there and that you have a transmission jack to be able to raise and lower that transmission in there. One thing I overlooked was a 13mm socket and ratchet in order to reinstall the bolts that hold the torque converter to the flywheel, as well as a 1 1/16 socket and breaker bar in order to roll the engine over manually in order to get the torque converter holes to line up. But that is pretty much it for the reinstallation, guys. I've gotten a lot more experience in removing and reinstalling these transmissions, especially in this car, thanks to a bad torque converter. No thanks. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to comment below. If you haven't already, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell in order to be notified of future uploads. And also, guys, I just want to quickly mention, I've had a few people that have been asking if there's any other ways that they can support the channel monetarily, and I really didn't have an answer until recently. What I ended up doing, for anyone that wants to help support the channel, that loves the content, and has been helped by the content, I've started a Patreon with a couple different subscription levels. The subscription gets you 2-day early access to all the videos that I release, as well as, I don't know if you know what a Discord is, but I started a Discord server for all the Patreon subscribers where you can talk with me as well as the rest of the community directly. It's a fun way of communicating, and it's only for Patreon subscribers if you're interested. As far as normal YouTube subscribers go, I'm not going to be changing or structuring any of my content or putting it behind a paywall. Everything, as far as you guys know, will be going exactly as the way it's always been going. I'm never going to put any content behind a paywall for you guys. This has always been a hobby for me, and that's the way it's going to stay. See you guys in the next video.